There are pains that do not disappear when a relationship ends, when someone leaves, or when life breaks apart in ways you never expected. They stay inside you quietly. They change shape over time, but they continue living somewhere beneath your everyday routines. And the strange thing is that most people around you never truly notice it. You continue working, you continue answering messages, you continue smiling when necessary, but internally, it feels as if a part of your life remained trapped in the past. Maybe you know this feeling. Maybe you know what it means to wake up in the morning with heaviness already sitting inside your chest before the day has even started. Maybe you know what it feels like to replay the same memory over and over again, as if your mind refuses to accept that something is truly over. You revisit conversations. You imagine different endings, different choices, different words. You ask yourself, what if I had stayed? What if I had left sooner? What if I had understood sooner? What if they had loved me differently? And without realizing it, you slowly become emotionally attached to a version of reality that no longer exists. Before we go deeper into this video, I want to ask you something. If you are carrying emotional pain right now, if there is something in your life that still hurts even after time has passed, write it in the comments. Not because strangers can magically erase your suffering, but because one of the worst parts of emotional pain is believing you are alone in it. And if these videos help you feel understood, subscribe to the channel. Here, we do not pretend pain does not exist. We try to understand it, transform it, and turn it into something that no longer controls our lives. One of the hardest truths about emotional suffering is this: we do not suffer only because of what happened. We suffer because a part of the mind keeps resisting reality. The human mind has a desperate need to create meaning out of pain. It wants explanations. It wants closure. It wants a reason that finally makes the suffering feel acceptable. But life does not always give us that. Some people leave without explanations. Some betray you while looking into your eyes. Some promises collapse slowly until there is nothing left to save, and some wounds never receive an apology. This is why many people remain emotionally trapped for years, not because the event itself is still happening, but because internally they are still fighting against the fact that it happened at all. The mind keeps trying to rewrite the past, and this creates one of the deepest forms of suffering a human being can experience. Because eventually exhaustion arrives. You become tired of thinking, tired of remembering, tired of carrying conversations inside your head that ended long ago, and yet you still cannot let go. This is something many people secretly experience after emotional trauma. The body moves forward, but emotionally they remain stuck in a moment that never fully healed. A person may continue functioning normally on the outside while internally living in permanent emotional survival mode. This is why unresolved pain changes personality. Some people become emotionally distant. Some become hypervigilant. Some stop trusting completely. Some start abandoning themselves, trying to keep others from leaving. And one of the saddest things is that many people do not even realize how much their pain has transformed them. There are people who call themselves independent, when in reality they are terrified of needing anyone. There are people who say they do not care anymore while secretly feeling devastated inside. There are people who desperately crave love, but the moment intimacy becomes real, they panic and pull away. This is one of the cruelest psychological paradoxes. Sometimes the thing we desire most is also the thing we fear the most. We want connection, but fear abandonment. We want honesty, but fear rejection. We want peace, but have become emotionally addicted to chaos because chaos feels familiar. Pain creates contradictions inside people. And if those contradictions are never understood, they silently shape the rest of a person's life. This is why avoiding pain never truly works. Most people today are not actually processing their emotions. They are distracting themselves from them. Endless scrolling, constant noise, toxic relationships, work, validation, attention, entertainment, anything to avoid silence, because silence is dangerous when you have unresolved emotions inside you. The moment everything becomes quiet, the mind starts reopening doors you spent months trying to keep closed. And maybe this is why so many people are afraid of being alone. Not because solitude itself is unbearable, but because silence forces them to finally hear everything they have been trying not to feel. The sadness, the rage, the grief, the loneliness, the disappointment, but healing rarely begins in distraction. Healing begins when a person finally stops running away from themselves, and this is where acceptance becomes necessary. Not passive acceptance, not weakness, not pretending that what happened was acceptable. Real acceptance means understanding that you cannot continue destroying your present, trying to emotionally negotiate with the past. This is one of the most difficult psychological transitions in human life, because a part of you still hopes, still waits, still imagines a perfect conversation that fixes everything, still fantasizes about closure, still wants reality to become different from what it is. But healing often begins the moment you stop asking the past to change. The Stoics understood something modern people constantly forget. There are things within your control, and there are things outside of it. You cannot control who betrayed you, who abandoned you, who misunderstood you, or who failed to love you properly. You cannot control what already happened, but you can control the meaning you build from it, and that changes everything. Because many people unknowingly spend years emotionally fighting ghosts. They replay the same memories every day, hoping that somehow the outcome will feel different. But the past never argues back. It simply stays where it is while your energy slowly disappears. Acceptance does not erase pain immediately. Sometimes it feels like grief itself. Because when you finally stop resisting reality, you are forced to mourn not only what happened, but also the future you imagined. And this is where many people break emotionally, not because they lost someone, but because they lost the version of life they believed they were going to have, a relationship, a dream, a future, a sense of safety. And grieving invisible losses is one of the loneliest experiences a human being can go through because other people cannot always see what died inside you. This is why emotional pain can feel so isolating. You continue living externally while internally carrying ruins nobody notices. And eventually you become tired of pretending. This is why emotional healing requires honesty. Not performative positivity, not motivational phrases, not pretending to be over it. Real healing begins when you stop lying to yourself about what hurts. And sometimes one of the most powerful things a person can do is incredibly simple. Write. Write what was never said. Write the anger. Write the grief. Write the disappointment. Write the truth you keep swallowing every day. Not to send it, not to impress anyone, but to finally remove emotional poison from your own mind. Many people do not realize how much suffering comes from unexpressed emotions. Thoughts repeated endlessly inside the mind become heavier over time. They begin shaping your identity, your relationships, your self-worth. But once emotions are externalized, something changes. For the first time, the pain stops endlessly circling inside your head and begins taking a visible form outside of you. And sometimes what you discover is surprising. Sometimes beneath anger, there is sadness. Sometimes beneath sadness, there is abandonment. Sometimes beneath abandonment, there is a simple human desire to feel loved, chosen, and emotionally safe. And there is nothing weak about that. Another thing many people misunderstand is silence. Most people use silence as punishment, isolation, emotional shutdown. But silence can also become restoration. Not the silence of emptiness, but the silence where you finally reconnect with yourself after years of emotional noise. Because the truth is that many people abandon themselves while trying to save relationships, save others, or avoid rejection. They become disconnected from their own needs, boundaries, emotions, and identity, and after enough pain, they no longer even know who they are outside of survival mode. This is why solitude can become transformative if used correctly, because eventually you begin hearing yourself again. You start recognizing how exhausted you truly are, how much emotional weight you have been carrying, how often you ignored your own suffering trying to appear strong. And slowly, something inside you begins changing. Not dramatically, not overnight, but quietly. You stop chasing people who continuously hurt you. You stop begging for emotional crumbs. You stop trying to earn love through self-sacrifice. You stop abandoning yourself to avoid being abandoned by others. And this is where real inner strength begins emerging. Not coldness, not emotional numbness. Awareness. The kind of awareness that only pain can create. There is an ancient Japanese art called kintsugi. When a vase breaks, the cracks are not hidden. They are repaired with gold. And instead of pretending the object was never broken, the fractures become part of its beauty. The object becomes more unique because it survived breaking, and perhaps human beings are not so different. Some wounds will always leave marks. Some memories will always hurt a little. Some scars never completely disappear. But that does not mean your life ended the moment you were broken. Sometimes pain destroys illusions that needed to die. Sometimes heartbreak forces people to finally confront themselves. Sometimes loss becomes the beginning of self-respect. Sometimes suffering awakens a strength that comfort never could. And maybe this is the hardest truth of all. Healing does not mean becoming the person you were before the pain. Healing means becoming someone new, someone more conscious, more emotionally honest, more capable of protecting their peace, more capable of recognizing their own worth without begging others to confirm it. The people who truly heal are not the people who never suffered. They are the people who suffered deeply, but refuse to let suffering become their entire identity. And one day, almost without noticing it, you realize something has changed. The memories are still there, but they no longer control you. The past still exists, but it no longer defines your future. The wound is still part of your story, but it is no longer the center of your life. And that is the moment when pain finally stops being a prison and becomes part of your strength instead.